Hi, this is Paul, and I've got Justin and John with me, and they've been working on this estuary video, and they've got some stuff we've got to do. So carry on.
Yeah, okay. So those of you that were at the Chino conference about almost a year ago now, that John organized, John and I thought that it would be nice to shoot a video of a full estuary, but not one that's over Zoom, but actually an in-person estuary. So I brought a couple of cameras to the Chino conference, and we gathered several people together, and John basically ran an estuary group just like he would run it in real life. And I think it would be a nice thing. First of all, I think the conversation was very interesting. And then second of all, I think it's fascinating to see what it's like when one of these meetings is done in a room in person, and you can really see all of the extra sort of value added, the nonverbal communication, the energy playing off of each other, all of that stuff. I think is very valuable to see the difference. And I think that this would be a great video to look at for anybody that wanted to try out an estuary, sort of to get a real sense of what it's like.
Yeah, it makes for a nice intro and gives a really good picture of what happens in an in real life estuary meeting. I would like to first of all thank you, Justin, for doing this. This is a wonderful thing, and thank you for Paul for hosting this video for now to introduce it to a larger community. But the difference, of course, is there is a difference between in real life and this one that happened at a conference, because we're dealing with the pre-screened audience. So normally we would advertise our estuaries through meetup.com. There's still a little bit of advertising happening through this little corner, and also through Estuary Hub, which is another way that gets some exposure, but we're working hard at getting that a little bit more broadened into a wider community. So meetup.com right now is the broadest advertising that we do, and we don't gather people who know about John Vervaeke, Jonathan Pajot, or Paul Vanderklay. We gather people who have nothing to do on Tuesday night and who want to go to a conversation group, and they noticed on meetup.com, they were told that there is this thing happening at such and such a location, and we're going to do that. And when they come together, they are even more diverse in real life than what this group is, because this group, of course, these are all people who were interested in the conference, who knew the main speakers, and who were there because they had a particular passion for their own spiritual journey or their journey toward a spiritual home. There was a little bit more commonality among the people. And the other thing is that you are going to hear some reference to this little corner by the participants of this conversation, of this estuary meeting, this sample, and they say TLC. So I just want to make sure that everybody knows that TLC refers to this little corner, which is Paul's magnificent effort online to create these kinds of mutually respectful conversations across identical line or ideological lines on his channel. It's just that we do it on the ground. So that's the difference. TLC is this little corner, Paul's thing online. There are all kinds of ways in which you can make fun of those letters, but we won't do that here.
Right.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So basically the video is they were all strangers. Really, none of them knew each other before, except for going to the conference. So what they had in common was this familiarity with the speakers at the conference. There's a reference or two to your talk at the conference, John. So I'll have Paul drop a link to that.
Put a link to that below.
Yeah, in case somebody wants to see what they're talking about in terms of that. But let me just share my screen here. I want to show you guys the difference. Essentially, this is the previous training video that we had. Which is everybody in squares, and everybody in their own home. you know? And so I think that if you really want a picture of what a conversation could be like in your local town or whatever, this is going to be a little bit better picture of it. It's lightly edited. Just the only time I edited it was something if it was bad sound or if somebody had to leave early and their conversation thread didn't really wrap up. But essentially, it just unfolds the way it did in real life.
Yep. These were lovely people. They all agreed to be filmed like this, and they signed a waiver, so we're good to go.
Sounds good.
Okay. So without further ado, here is the sample estuary.
We're going to go through 4 steps. First, I'm going to ask you all to introduce each other, or introduce yourself. We're going to go around the room, and you're going to say, hi, my name is Ann, and I am from Minnesota or from St. Paul, Minnesota. And then so how did you get here? Well, the Peugeot pipeline. You can say the Peugeot pipeline if that's what got you here. Or you can tell a little story about, my friend told me about this and, blah, 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 blah. I have no idea what this is, so I'm happy to be here. And then the 4th thing is, why are you here? Then the next step in the estuary protocol is to put a topic on the table. Nobody comes with a prepared agenda, but I'm going to ask you, if you are willing, share something with the group that you have been thinking about in the past week or since the last time we were together or whenever, that falls into one of 4 categories. It could be something intellectually, something that you thought about, or a book you read, or a lecture you heard, or a podcast you listened to. So intellectually is one possibility. Share with the group something that was meaningful to you and why that matters to you. Secondly, we also live in a context. So whatever has been in the news that grabbed your attention, that caught your imagination, that you felt like, wow, this is something worthwhile, and or this is important. It could be an earthquake or a news event like a trial or court case or a crime or whatever happens in your context. Thirdly, we're also people, and we have personal lives, and perhaps your grandma died, or you just moved to a different house, or you got fired from your job, or something happened in your personal life that is kind of weighing heavy on your mind. This is not the kind of thing we're going to discuss at length, but in order for us to know who we are in this room together, it'd be nice to know if that's heavy on your mind right now. And so, yeah, if you recently got divorced, or you have a new baby, or whatever, this is the time to say that. And finally, 4thly, estuarily, this is a democratically run group. And if you feel strongly that instead of having the chairs in a circle, they should be in a square, now is the time to bring that up. If you think we should have better refreshments than we normally do, now is the time to speak up. Or if you want to depose the leader and get a new leader, now is the time to bring that up. So there's 4 areas: intellectually, contextually, personally, and estuarily. And in any one of those 4 areas, feel free to share with the group what you would like to put on the virtual table. Now, several of you are shy. You can pass. You don't have to say anything. You just say, I pass. And that's perfectly okay. Eventually, we're going to end up with some stuff on the table, so, we'll get there. But you should feel no pressure or anything like that. But the one thing that is very important, and that is that you all listen very carefully. You might make some mental notes. It's actually a little bit of a difficult exercise to say, because then the next round after that, we're going to decide from all the topics that were put on the virtual table, we're going to decide which of those resonated with me. When so-and-so said that, he had read this book, I was intrigued by that. I want to hear more about that. Or when so-and-so said that, they had thought about this particular thing and it's kind of a deep topic and it's close to my heart, I want to hear more about that. So in other words, we're going to say something about what resonated with us. Here you are not allowed to pass. We want to know what you heard. We want to know what is meaningful to you. And then in that process, we are going to discover, believe it or not, we're going to discover the spirit of the room. we're going to discover the agreed upon topic, because sometimes what so-and-so said matches with what so-and-so said and what he said, and these things kind of fit together. That seems like a good topic to explore together. And so when we discover what that topic is, it's kind of a cool moment, because now we know what the spirit in the room is saying that we're going to use as our topic of conversation for the time that remains. So nobody comes with a pre-prepared agenda. Nobody is going to, get on a soapbox and do this or that. We're going to find out together what we're going to talk about later. So if you don't mind, we're going to go clockwise, starting from my left. You're going to be first. And again, I'm going to repeat. If you don't feel comfortable sharing at this point, say I pass, and then we'll go on to the next person.
Gotcha, yeah.
So we're going to start with the introductions. So, Kara, tell us about yourself. What is your name? Where are you from? How did you get here? And why are you here?
So I'm Kara. I'm from Tucson, Arizona. And I found this conference through Jonathan Pageau's website. But actually, I found Jonathan Pageau through John Vervaeke. Listened to his lecture series over the last year or so of lots of, lots of other things, found my way to lots of really interesting content through him. And when I woke up that one morning, saw that announcement, I was like, oh, I have to go to this, and I want to bring my mom. My mom is a Methodist minister, and I am not active in the church and have not been for about 30 years. And so I thought it would be a really neat opportunity for the two of us to reconnect on the topic of spirituality and religion. And hopefully some big conversation as a result. Nice.
And you? Cool.
Hi, I'm Al. I grew up in Illinois, but I live in Los Angeles. I've been there for many years. Similarly, YouTube, the YouTube connection. And I just had something stirring in me that said I should come today. So that's why I'm here.
Good.
My name's Eddie, and I actually live in Juarez, Mexico. And my friend, Donnie, I've known him since he was 17, and he lives in Fort Worth, and I grew up there. And we talk about, mostly I listen to Paul Vanderklay more than anybody, through Jordan Peterson and Pageau and Vervaeke. Listen to him, and we talk almost every morning about what's, this little corner. And he was like, we should go. And I was like, okay. So he drove from Fort Worth, picked me up in El Paso, and he spent a day in Juarez with me and my family, and here we are. And it's just I don't know if it's my wife doesn't understand what I'm doing here. And his wife just said go. And my wife said you can go. So here we are, and just more for experience of getting hooked up with my friend again after all these years. Hadn't seen him for a while, and listen. I like to listen to a lot of YouTube videos with people with a lot of books behind them. Talk about it's like, okay, and some of it I understand, some of it I don't, but something I enjoy. So
thank you very much.
Glad to be here.
I'm William, and I'm from the Pacific Northwest, the Olympic Peninsula specifically, and I'm here. I think the reason a lot of people might be here is because seeking meaning and not just comment sections on YouTube, seeking to have real communion with other people. And I will say that YouTube videos definitely helped me feel like this was the place I needed to be. And I found Jonathan Pageau at a very ripe time in my life when I was looking for a church. I was looking for a community. I wasn't even looking for a church that I didn't think I was looking for a church. But he eventually led me to see, the beauty of the liturgy and participative communion with the divine, and that kind of just blew my mind. And never thought I would ever go back to church. And now I'm baptized in the Orthodox Church, and I guess I'm here to see where other people are at on that journey of finding home. And I may have found a place that I go to church, but I'm still curious about how everyone else here finds that place. So,
Cute.
Hi, I'm Paul. I'm from Regina, Saskatchewan, which is up in Canada. I attended the first conference up in Thunder Bay. like my need for that was, I think you guys may have heard of this thing called COVID. And we had this really experience where everybody was shuttered off, like, you know, put in spots where it's like, okay, you don't talk to anybody, right? And then we lived in this, like, you know, strange world that, you know, lasted for way too long. And it got partway through, it was like, okay, we're going ahead with this conference because it started to look like there was a light there. And then it was like meeting people that I've been like digesting these videos like nonstop about, like in person. Yes, I'm doing that totally. And when I got there, it was just this release. You know, it was this like experience of like all of this sort of like, oh, you know, you get that too. And it's like this just bubbling of like it was alive right away. Like I tell people that it was this idea that sometimes when you meet somebody new, you talk about the weather or you just sort of spit, but this just like cuts through all of that. And then you just dive into these really deep and interesting conversations. The difficulty is that it's so high all the time that you have to sort of like stop and take a breath. So it's the start of our journey. It's going to be a bit of a marathon, but I'm looking forward to what this now produces. I found from the first one that I really enjoyed the experience, but now what I really want to do is take and put into practice something that's important. And I feel like the Estuary is that. I didn't successfully establish one myself, but I'd like to learn more because I do think that communication like this is, and I think everyone that I talked to at the last conference agreed that that's something that's really important about it. You know, that connection of people from different backgrounds.
Cool. I am from Austin, Texas, originally from New Hampshire. Like many of you through podcasts, the Podcast Connection, it was, I think, through Jonathan Pajau's podcast that I heard about this event. And I'd previously heard about Thunder Bay, but it was too difficult to make it for me. So when I heard that y'all were organizing a similar event closer to me in the United States, it just made so much sense to go. And I guess what I'm looking for is no real expectations, but yesterday a group of us went to paintballing, and there was a lot of spontaneous conversation around some of what's discussed in the podcast, and it was just amazing. It was such an awesome experience to kind of connect on that way, because it might seem like some of this material is like esoteric. You mentioned it's kind of high, and I sometimes find it difficult to connect with my friends that might be more like lay people about this material, especially when it comes to spirituality, which I feel like has kind of taken a wayside in modern life. So very happy to be kind of rediscovering that within myself and hearing about other people doing the same.
Hi, my name is Bianca. I live right here in Upland, so I'm really close. Somebody sent me a video of Jonathan Pajot, and I was getting into reading my Bible, and I realized that the Bible isn't just the literal text, but there's a lot of symbolism behind it. And so listening to Jonathan Pajot's videos really helped me grow in that sense, and just the way he explains things was really enlightening. And through him, that's how I found Jordan Peterson and John Rebecki. And I love psychology, so kind of it's the best of both worlds. And I've never been to a conference. This is my first time, and I guess I didn't really come with expectations. I was kind of just coming into it with an open mind, and I really enjoyed the whole, I signed up before knowing what the conference was about, just because of the people who were coming. I knew it was going to be good, and just the whole concept of trying to find a home, the quest of finding a home. And I always felt like I didn't belong. And then coming into reading my scriptures and the symbolism behind it, I feel like, at least around my area, I couldn't really connect with people in that sense, and it wasn't a big topic. And so coming here, I figured I would be with like-minded people, and I think it's awesome that not everyone's Christian, and that you know, we're all coming from different backgrounds, yet we all have this desire for connectiveness and spirituality. And I do believe we're spiritual beings. So it's just really exciting to hear everyone talk, even just the side conversations and hearing the speakers. So I'm really excited. And this is honestly like what I've been looking for and like this group. So I'm just really excited.
Thank you.
Yeah, I first started listening to Paul, and somebody said this in the earlier Estuary group, because I did a Google search for like Christian perspective on Jordan Peterson, and Paul came up. That was back in like 2017 and 2018. And so I've been following him ever since. And then he eventually brought in Jonathan Pajot and John Vervaeke, and so I've just kind of been along for the journey. And it kind of coincided with my own spiritual journey of things that had going on in my life, and it really helped me get a really firm grasp of the Christian perspective and how that applies to my own journey with God. And also, I think probably what brought me into Jordan Peterson is because I am I'm a storyboard artist, but I work in story all the live long day, and so I was interested in anything that was talking about myth and narrative and things like that because I love it, and so that's how I kind of got drawn into the Jordan Peterson world.
Thank you.
My name is Karen Canan. I'm also from the area. I'm in Yorba Linda, and I'm a cradle Orthodox and always have felt blessed to be living a liturgical life. And when Jonathan Pajot came about and on YouTube, it thrilled me that someone could connect to so many people and shed light on something that really, to me, was a hidden treasure in America. And I love hearing stories of people finding the faith. I love hearing stories of people coming to the faith, but also that sense of community. So, and just even hearing words and understanding how important being in communion with other people is. So I think the Estuary idea is spectacular. And I love to hear discussion and other people's input.
So full disclosure, I have been friends with Paul for many, many years, and him and I were already, we knew each other before he even knew about Jordan Peterson. And so I have the interesting backstory that I once started a storytelling group here in Chino, and we advertised it on meetup.com. So I became comfortable and familiar with meetup.com. And so when Jordan Peterson showed up in town and I was told about that from Paul, he said, yeah, he's going to come to Los Angeles. Why don't you go and check it out? I did, but I also immediately set up a conversation group, Jordan Peterson meetup group here in Chino Hills, and worked smooth as glass. All kinds of people showed up. And so the idea of gathering people for conversation is not altogether new. Meetup.com is all about that. It's conversation, knitting, bicycling, whatever it is that you want to do, you can always find a group of people that are interested in doing that. So here I am. The new iteration of the Jordan Peterson Meetup Group is Estuary, and we're going to have an Estuary experience, and I'm not going to talk about it too much more because there's plenty of literature online that you can learn more about that. But, Kara, we need some stuff on the table for us to have a conversation about. So what have you been thinking about since the last time we worked together that you think might be of interest to the group and that you would like to put on the table in the four categories that we spoke about, either intellectually or contextually or personally or estuarily? What would you like to put on the table and do it in such a way that we can kind of connect to what you're thinking about?
Yeah, well, one of the things that's been very present for me in my life in the last, just recently, has been what I do for work, and which is I'm an engineer, and it's really like thinking about moving into something that is more meaningful to me, but likely also more challenging and something that I'm not as familiar with. And so I'm kind of in the space of like, how do I let go of things that are very familiar and that I've been doing for a long time, to try and do something that is maybe more meaningful and might have greater impact in the world than what I do. So that's a big big thing to think about for me right now.
Excellent. Thank you. What would you like to put on the table for our consumption?
Well, I'm a new-ish father, 14-month-old boy. Thank you.
You're getting any sleep at all?
A little bit.
He is this weekend.
I got a sweet hotel room. Can't wait for tonight. Yeah, so I guess for me, I've been a kind of a spiritual tourist, I suppose, and moved and shifted in a lot of circles. I was raised in the church, and then the Presbyterian church, and then pretty much before today, I hadn't really been back into a church in many years, and so it was a pretty overwhelming emotional experience just to walk in the door. And so yeah, I've been struggling personally with God and with that own sense of spiritual religiosity. My fiance, soon-to-be wife, who I shared this child with, is English, and it's a very, as Ian McGilchrist would say, a very irreligious society. Yeah. And so yeah, I'm kind of, I guess, trying to find my own path and simultaneously trying to figure out how to model that or what to tell a young child in this world. What I feel, what the hell do I know? Got lots of ideas. It's gonna be great. I'm into it. Definitely recommend having a kid.
Now we're gonna hold it. One at a time.
He reminds me of my brother a lot. So.
Eddie, what would you like to put on the table for us?
Well, I think a lot about, I'm 54 years old and I just barely feel like I'm growing up. Trying to let myself be true, know myself. I hear a lot of people talk about mini crisis and stuff like that. That's kind of where I live and what I do is there's where I live in Juarez, and I met this lady, and I'm a massage therapist. I took a class from her like 20 years ago, and she said, well, come here and help. And so I went there, and so 3 days a week we work on special needs kids and I met my wife, or she brought her kid in, and then so I ended up falling in love, moving there, and where I live, there's no dirt roads. It's all dirt roads, and we don't, church didn't even have a bathroom, and people don't have many crises. They're just trying to survive, and I just feel like God put me there to have me, the sequence of events that where I am now, and I just think that, these people talking and stuff, and I'm just go help somebody, do something for somebody else, get out of yourself, and it's just, I don't know, it's just my life is full. There's always 10, 20, 30 people at my house on a Sunday, or, it's just, so I'm just kind of trying to, I don't know what I'm trying to do, just trying to feel God more in my life, and it's just, but then I stop, and when I stop and pause, I'm like, here you are. You look what you're doing. For a big part of my life, I was, alcohol and drugs was a big part of my life, and breaking out of that was just, wow, we're here for so much more than our own self-gain, and actually doing things for greater purpose and my own gain is just kind of just flip my perspective. I hear all these conversations and stuff, and it's like, yeah, I don't have that problem. I just want to, do the next right thing, I guess is what what we should be doing. So I finally feel like I'm doing what God wants me to do instead of what I want to do, and my life is love. That's pretty good.
Thank you.
So that documentary, What is a Woman? I'm asking the question lately, what is a Christian? And think they should make a documentary about that. I sense there's a zeitgeist around Christ these days. I find a lot of these people in this corner of the internet, but also like just people that you would never think would get interested in Christianity that are starting to ask, questions about it. And I'm really curious about that and how people kind of find Christ on their own, but also in a way are spoken to in their own particular personality or in their own particular interests. It's like this, we're not necessarily defining Christ, but he's also defining us too. And it's this, like St. Paul said, it's not I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And how we can get, radical, people like radical Marxists, like, yeah. And we're all, we're all in the same room. And in a way, I think for me, the elephant in the room is Christ. And who is Christ? Like, I think Christ becomes a different person to each person while being the same person. So how is that playing out today? Because I noticed these very interesting people that you would never think would become Christian. I mean, myself included. I never expected. I had that kind of C.S. Lewis moment of like, I'm now a Christian. I can't believe this. And it's something that just ended up completing a lot of these questions I had, but it had to come through a sort of like Tao. It had to come through a leading me in, like an inception, like it was like, wow, this is actually the only thing that makes sense. And so I'm just curious about how that elephant in the room is manifesting itself to everyone. Because I feel like it is the elephant in the room. It's always being brought up in all these presentations, even with John Vervaeke, it comes back to Christ. And so let's talk about that. What's the deal with that?
You mentioned that you brought your mom to this, and I got to meet her very briefly there, and she seems really lovely. My grandma's 96, and she's starting to struggle a little bit more. And some of the discussions that are coming up around death and different things make me, really ponder for the future. And sort of like, for me, she was a spiritual presence in my life. And for the first 38 years until I did find Christ, I came to Orthodoxy through Jonathan Peugeot as well. And, but I think about what she meant to me, meeting with her and the joy that she would bring into my life, just connecting with her. I say I didn't have religion, but in a sense I had family, and that connection to her was really powerful to me. So she told me that her favorite place or most beautiful place that she had traveled to was Death Valley. And I always thought that was kind of funny because I never put those things together. But part of when I decided to come on this trip, I tacked on, because it's easiest to fly into Vegas for anywhere, because Vegas is where everybody wants to be, supposedly. So I flew into Vegas and traveled to Death Valley before coming to this conference. And it's stark. It's really stark there. It's hot. But it's alive. Like there's this life and vibrancy to what it is, and the beauty, and it was all the things. And it sort of made me think about, the relationships with her. And then the biggest contrast, and maybe the connection to this conference, was that coming back from Death Valley to Las Vegas was like going from this place that was alive to this place that was actually very dead. Like it felt like I was watching, zombies walking around with plugging all these machines, and there's this sort of landscape change. You would think that you'd feel more connected with all these people around, but you couldn't have felt more disconnected from the people around, just the way that sort of seems to sit. So there's this like rise and fall, and I guess maybe, bringing this back to my grandma, I want her last days to be peaceful. I want to regard that memory of this trip, and I want to have an experience with her about a discussion, a connection to that point. I want to keep that life in me, because I know that someday her body will go. Yeah. Thank you.
I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school. My mother and father are from Poland. They immigrated to the United States in 1982. And they took pretty menial jobs. They were educated in their countries, but when they came to the United States, they just had certain expectations. They had just started a family. And so, they held a roof over our heads. And I think they sort of were able to imbue us with certain values. But the Roman Catholic faith never really clicked with me. And I think that's not an uncommon story. So throughout my life, I continued with the normal path of finding a career. I'm a software engineer now. And it's a very sort of logical kind of career progression. And spirituality doesn't really factor into it. In fact, I'm always a little bit shocked when I find out that a coworker is, or specifically mentions that they are Christian, because it feels so uncommon, which actually makes the landscape of workplace relationships seem pretty dull. But that's very common, the secular world, the sort of progressive secular world, I feel like is, it's taken a lot of luster out of workplace relationships. And I started to wonder whether or not I could recoup the spirituality that I had once sort of found, but not really integrated with Roman Catholicism, if I could rediscover it in some way. So I don't know if that is specifically Christian. I don't really know what that looks like. But I'm pretty sure that it's very important. So I'm trying to rediscover it and salvage it in some way.
Something I've been working on is, I guess, how to balance my ego. Growing up, I guess I struggled with self-doubt and insecurities. And then I heard about ego death, and I never took psychedelics to that extent. So I never hit that point. But then it was kind of, how do I deal with receiving a compliment and being confident without being prideful, and without, I don't know, just kind of finding that balance of I was uniquely made, right? And I am made in the image of God. So how do I confidently walk in that without doubting myself in decisions I make? Because then that led into me being indecisive and seeing the positive and negative of every single decision, which caused me to be stagnant. And so I guess that's something that I've been dealing with, and how to make a decision and trust that it's going to be okay, or I'll get through it. And so right now I'm trying to figure out what grad program I want to get into. And it's finances, and how am I going to afford a house even, and how is this going to affect my personal relationships? And so I kind of overthink decisions sometimes. And so I guess I just kind of need to trust that, God will, I don't know, he'll open a door somewhere that I need to be at. And so, yeah, that's what I've been kind of dealing with right now.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you.
So yes, mine as well, and maybe it's just being Orthodox. I don't know if you've read Paul Kingsnorth at all.
Really?
So it's funny because I think he even uses the word Christ hunted me. I don't know. So it's interesting that you bring up the fact that you never imagined you'd be Christian, because with all the good and bad that comes with the internet, and we all know that there's obviously bad that comes along with it as well. If it can expose people, and I picture Jordan Peterson coming in and eventually becoming Orthodox, and literally thousands. I just picture thousands of people.
I'm being serious.
And you know what? I swear to you, I do believe that there are people that are on their knees praying for this state and this country and keeping us from a great misery, because there are some people that, we have, when we talk about, when Jordan is talking about monastics, there are people that devote their lives for every breath praying for each and every one of us that we don't know, so I'm thankful for them. And when he talks about Christ, you're thinking, I pray for those who have left Christ after having known him. And I think, he goes and finds that lost coin or that lost sheep and leaves the 99, or went all the way to Hades to grab Adam by the hand and pull him up. So there's no one that's too far or too, so I love the fact that there are people searching for the truth and that he's there and he's waiting for us with open arms. So I like what you said, William.
Thank you.
So, okay. So now, having listened carefully, and I think you guys all really listened very well to one another. I can tell by the way some people are, yeah, it's very good. So now of all the stuff that's on the table, think about all of it. Do you see any of these things that fit together? Or I'm actually more interested, say something about how you think that some topic specifically resonates with you today, even though you didn't come to the meeting today with that on your mind, but you said, oh, wait a minute, what he or she said, that really grabbed me. So is there anything on the table right now that you would like to further pursue?
I think what really resonated with me was both Paul's comment and question that he's in with about his grandmother and family and death and grieving, or preparing for grieving, and like also Luke's being also a engineer and kind of from a secular world, definitely resonated with the question of finding spirituality in a secular world. So,
how about you?
Honorable mention to Eddie was forget the meaning crisis, just go help somebody already. That was that's it. Don't forget that. But yeah, mostly I think the framing of what is a Christian really in absentia maximus, like that, and the fact that it was basically then seconded and thirded over here was very powerful. Was a sort of additional layer of I guess fear that washed over me as Karen was describing this. I guess it was like something about if Jordan Peterson converted and then all of a sudden this would unleash conversion widespread, was simultaneously very exciting and also filled me with dread and horror in such a way that was vibrating me very deeply. And to tag John Vervaeke's comments up there, very, very much like a psychedelic experience, which I guess now is maybe just the spirit of the rip that I'm feeling that very, very much.
Okay. Eddie, what's on the table that grabbed your attention?
Well, I think what Paul says about being a Christian, what Christ does for me, what I cannot do for myself, and my my own personal history of different religions that I've gone through, and just how much fear and guilt and that I've from a child that I still carry and still trying to I don't know what the word is, but overcome or just accept that I am, a child of God, and trying to just be that. And it's in this world, it's just I don't understand sometimes, but I know that I am, and just trying to be that.
Great. Paul, what's on the table that resonated with you?
So this came through in both of what you guys said to me as a common theme. It was the idea that it's sort of this path, and actually what you said too, John, in your discussion on stage, it was this path, the shell pointing this way, pointing that way, sort of thing. This discernment, this idea of which is the right path to follow, and then having some ambiguity about the symbols being all wrong, or having people give you advice when they clearly, it clearly tells you the wrong thing, you know, and then sort of what to do in kind of the face of that, you know, unknowing, like how to connect with the identity of like, what is, you know, a strong me, or, you know, what is the proper way to, you know, connect with people in a way that I find meaningful. I think that was sort of the theme that I picked up, that, you know, sort of thinking about what it seemed like maybe some of the things I was hearing.
Okay. Thank you very much. Luke, what did you pick up from what everybody said?
Yeah, I guess I mentioned earlier that I went through Catholic school and it never really stuck. But I think that maybe because I didn't really get the type of understanding of it that is compatible with me and my learning style. So the more I learn about Christianity, and Jonathan Pageau's style is really informative to me, because it seems to abstract it to a more foundational sort of grounding level that I really resonates with me, but also just academic works. So I would be very happy to talk about Christianity and people rediscovering Christianity. And it seems like there's more of a zeitgeist, as we mentioned, like of people coming into the faith. So that would be great to talk about for me.
Cool. Yes. Bianca, how about you?
I think for me, I kind of got that I should be more comfortable being open with my faith, and like, yeah, like what is a Christian? And I guess how can I show that I'm a Christian without necessarily saying I am a Christian, right? Like I want people to be able to see that within me, but also being comfortable to share out loud that I do believe in the Bible and in God and in spirituality. And so I before I used to kind of like sneak it in a little bit, and I'd be like, oh yeah, like that'd be such a blessing, and then like I noticed that like there's this one time where I mentioned it in conversation, and the conversation ended and we went our separate ways. I was in a ceramics class, and so after class, my classmate came up and they're like, are you a Christian? And I was just like, yeah, like I read my Bible. And like they're like, me too, you know? And so it was nice to be able to connect in that way. And I don't think it's as open in like a secular environment. And so I think like there's a bit of fear. And so that kind of reminded me of what Luke was saying.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. All right. What did you hear?
Well, I resonated with Al. And being and having a child and trying to model Christianity for them, and because I have a daughter, and just like I really want her to have a relationship with God too, because I'm not going to be there for her, and things will get tough, and I want her to have that solid foundation. Even if she goes away, I want her to really experience it as a child, so that I can give her something, a godly legacy, and even when I'm gone, she'll have that. And like walking that out, modeling it for her is something that I really try to do. And so when you were talking about having a son and how it kind of brings like faith kind of back into the picture, it gives it a whole new meaning, that resonated with me.
Lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting because with each person, like even just the struggles, whatever it might be, like I think when you've suffered and then you bring that to the table, obviously it gives you a different type of empathy that you're allowed to communicate with other people. And, and then in my mind, I go back, well, that's the Orthodox saints. Those, we have saints that we call upon for each individual need because they suffered in a particular area, that they would understand what maybe my suffering was like. So I'm picturing you working with those people in your area and thinking, he has no idea how powerful that makes your work. And then as being a father, I'm thinking, and then you saying that it kind of shook you, thinking, is this really what? It's a huge responsibility, but then just the whole coming to Christ is a huge responsibility. But I think I'm so amazed that you would recognize that that fear brings with it a type of awe that many that are complacent then don't approach it with. So like with each person's story, it's interesting because then you think of something, there's just like just a few words, you know, that you just, it captures you and you think, oh, well, that's how the saints were born. Oh, well, that fear of God is what gets you moving, you know, or, oh, that humility that you have about not thinking that you want to be prideful is an accomplishment and you want to be humble about it. So like with each, like you said, everybody is so unique. And with each person, it triggers a thought that we each have that you don't take the time to share when you're passing by.
That is true. So I actually appreciate the way you articulated that, and I see some similar things, although I think that there are, I don't know if I heard this correctly, but I think there might be two themes happening here, because I hear a sense of, I don't know about this Christianity thing, you know? And, I'd love to be able to pass it on to my kids, but it'd be nice if I actually knew what was going on here, you know? And then the other is a confident expression of faith that is looking for an even more confident expression of faith. And so I have a sense that we could probably all, I don't know exactly how that would work, because am I hearing this correctly, that there are some people in the room feel very strongly about their faith commitment and their faith convictions, and they would love to be more bold about it or look for other opportunities to share that. And then there are others in the room, am I hearing that correctly, that, I don't know about this stuff.
That sounds very accurate to me. Yes.
So how do these two things converge? Can we share about that? How did those two perspectives, how do they align, or how do they meet each other in the middle? We're looking for a common denominator for the rest of our conversation.
Could we start with again, in absentia, his reflection of what is a Christian? Because I would love to know.
Yeah.
And I was raised one, and maybe I am one. So will it help to deepen your own faith and practice for those of you that have strong answers to that, to tell somebody who wants to know genuinely like what that is? He said it was the elephant in the room, so. But of course now he's no longer in the room. So
An invisible elephant. We have an invisible elephant here. Yeah.
The guy who saw it is like, and if an elephant falls in the circus,
Does still make a sound. Oh. Yeah.
I guess I would have to be honest and say I would not have a lot to contribute to that, because I'm not sure I have an answer to that question, because I don't see myself as a Christian, and I'm good with that, and I'm really appreciate everybody here's faith and belief, but I don't know what I would be able to contribute to that conversation, just because I'm in my slightly different place.
Maybe the perfect thing is that you're an outsider for that, so you could give a perspective of someone who feels like they're outside of that as what that is. I think I would value that. I would be interested to hear that.
Mm-hmm. Any more feedback? We're still looking for the spirit in the room here.
Although I will say I like the idea of just confidence in your faith, because I think that bridges a lot of different topics that are not just Christianity.
Right.
It was interesting because with each comment that the speakers would make, I would jot something down. Like, okay, so what practices, and obviously there's going to be a lot of differing opinions, what practices do you think would make for the best stance? Instantly in my mind, prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. But that's the way my faith is practiced. And so, or, what might this be? And repentance would be one of the huge ones. So in my mind, with each question they had on stage, there was an answer, but it was something that has been ingrained because of practice. So,
right. We're dealing with some newbies and veterans here is what is really going on, right? Newbies and veterans. Is that a common denominator? Newbies and veterans? Yeah.
It's just people just seeking, everybody, even whether you're an oldie or a newbie, everybody's really just seeking truth. Like he was saying, love, What was it? Truth, beauty, and goodness. Goodness. Some.
Well, I have been known to say in the context, or at this point in the conversation, I have been known to say, is there somewhat of a consensus about what we're going to talk about in the time that remains us? Somewhat of a consensus? Shake your head one way or the other. Yeah?
Something like that. That's the thing. Do you know what it is?
Ah, I love it. I love it. I love it. Yeah. So, yeah. And this is often as hard as it is. For real. This is often as hard as it is to find out just what is it that we really want to talk about here. And then sometimes I go around one more time and say, okay, let's find out, judging from what other people said and how well you are able to listen. Let's go around one more time and focusing specifically on what you heard other people say, what could be the conversation for us tonight? Now, I'm belaboring the point in some way, but I really want you to have a sense that, because what I often say is, let's go. I say in my own estuary, I just say, let's go. We have a rough idea what's going on here, people? Yeah, let's go. And then some kind of a conversation ensues. I'm trying now, because we're all new at this and we don't know each other very well. I'm trying to make sure that we really all know where each person is coming from. So in view of what you hear the other people say, how do you think we should proceed? This is, by the way, the thing I love most. When a person closes their eyes, takes a deep sigh, and thinks about the question.
I feel like it's questions of faith and how does that fit with everybody else in the room?
Yeah.
Or even how do I fit with everybody else in the room?
That's an important question too.
Could you phrase what we're supposed to be focusing on again one more time, just for me?
Let's go around the room one more time with paying special attention to what other people said was important to them to proceed with and how you relate to that and what your preference would be.
I think can I just ditto what she said?
Yeah, you can. Yeah. Well, Eddie? Well.
Ditto. Yes, I think so. Yeah. Spiritual integration to all of our lives. Yeah. To the extent that it's possible.
Yeah, I feel like that's the whole. I feel like this room is encompassing the whole purpose of this conference, right? Like how to integrate spirituality and like our quest on like trying to find that comfort of honing within it. I do.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I think when Paul asked Kara the question about what do you think it should look like to you for that, because can you imagine if that were the case and you were to say whatever that is, I'd like some of that. That to me was very eye-opening for you to say to her, can you tell me, can you articulate?
Because I'm blind, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I can say the things that I see, but then when I get somebody else's perspective who's outside, it's like, oh yeah, that's the perspective I need usually, right? Like it's like that's the thing that sort of breaks up some of the blocks in me, because I think I know, right? And then that's the problem. That's like the pride, right? It's like, oh gosh, yeah, that's dangerous. But that's yeah, I find value in that too. But I just want to have a conversation, and I think that's. I'd sacrifice anything right now just to chalk.
All right, then I'm going to say it. Let's go.
Yeah.
I was gonna say from an outsider perspective, I suppose. Recently saw Nick Cave, the music artist, on Unheard, Freddie Sayers.
Cool.
And he lost a son at age 15. Son's 15, and he started going to church, and he said, I have continuous practice of going to church, and I used to go looking for reasons to not believe, but now I go looking for reasons to believe. And that's like, that's enough. And I thought that that was pretty powerful. I felt that was just pretty powerful.
You know,
that it doesn't mean that you have to have this absolute knowing of your faith. You should like show up and look for reasons to go deeper.
Yeah, I had that thought earlier. I think of while we were listening to Paul in the morning, you know, there was kind of a unity. Obviously, everyone's focus was oriented on what Paul was saying, which is not unlike church. And it was kind of a pleasant, beautiful black backdrop to the stage, comfortable seats. And I had a moment where I thought, what if I just go to church? I think I could probably just go, and I don't think that I need to have any expectations. Maybe just go, and if I can wake up that early on a Sunday, just enjoy it for what it is.
There's something about letting go of your own expectations and the expectations you feel as a father and the expectations you have from all your childhood experiences with church, and just to let those go and just to go and be honest. And you're just there to see. You're just there to explore. And that's part of like the wrestling with God that happens. And you could just, like if you're looking, you could just say to your kid, you're like, I don't know. I'm doing this, and just be, I don't have it all figured out, but I'm wrestling with it. Here's where I'm wrestling, you know? I think there's a, grace for yourself. There's a grace for yourself to explore that, you know?
Cool.
It seems to me that I've heard this through Jordan Peterson's podcast, but Israel apparently means, he who wrestles with God, we who wrestle with God. So it sounds like this has been a struggle for quite a while.
I guess then there's a question of the language, and we were talking about this a little bit, and that it's almost like the conferences like this are great, and the work that those guys are doing is great because we're creating, as in the image of God, we're creating a new logos to help more deeply understand and reanimate the spirit of what's going on right now. But the language is so fraught with all of these landmines. Even using a word like religion is gonna just like explode, somebody who's like right next to, like, near and dear to you. And I have a great big concern about that in my own relationship and in relationship with others. And as you were just reflecting there, like it's almost like, hey, I go to church. We're on drugs. I do. How does that become, it's so weird. It's the upside down inverted pyramid that we're in, right? We're in this like inverted space where, that's the thing the cool kids are doing. Thanks, Bridge.
I mean, I agree. Sorry, I don't mean to steal too much thunder here. I really want to give y'all a chance to talk, but I agree. I mean, I think the vocabulary is part of the understanding, and I was recently reading Tom Holland's book Dominion, which is more of a history of Christianity, and it just helped ground the tradition, the understanding, the spiritual awakening for me in a way that made practical sense rather than a sense of some rules that you have to remember. Which can be important too, but a deeper understanding, I think, that doesn't sound like magic woo-woo for the modern time, I think is actually attainable. At least it seems like it's working for me. Again, I'm not sure if I'm going to end up Christian, but what once was a set of rules that weren't questioned is now transforming into a deeper understanding through the understanding of our history with it.
So,
So I mean, I guess to answer your question, I'm hoping that a more grounded interpretation. I mean, more. I don't know if it's more or not, but at least it is for me, and I imagine others like me, with a more grounded, different understanding, reinterpretation of what may just sound like, magic woo-woo, which I think is kind of the modern interpretation of religion. You seem illogical when you say that you have this faith in Christ, a man that was buried and came back to life miraculously. That it can be more accepted with a reinterpretation.
And who would provide that new interpretation?
I don't know. I'm struggling with that. I think it's very difficult to introduce the concept to some of my more secular friends. I mean, I'm secular, but there's definitely a closed off secularity that I'd like to try to break through.
Yeah.
Do you think that closed offness is due to fear? If you had to pinpoint,
I think there's some of that. You mentioned you kind of felt that too, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like people are just so judgmental of that. And then there's just this stereotype of oh, you're a Christian, so they put you in this box of your beliefs. And I think that's, to answer your question, I feel like we would kind of be that example of a new Christianity, right? Or not, I don't know if new Christianity would be the right way, but just to show that we can have an open dialogue and we don't necessarily have to agree on everything, which is what we were talking about with this panel. Is I love the way they have conversations and how they communicate with one another, because they're different, yet they find common ground, and yet they each respect one another, and they're so good at listening. They don't interrupt each other all the time, and they let them finish their thought process. And I feel nowadays people don't necessarily know how to hold that or have that kind of conversation. And so it is a fear, and it's how am I gonna also the fear of I don't want to be the reason why you turn away from Christianity, or I don't want you to misconstrue something that I'm saying, and just
the burden of the other person's salvation is on your back. Well, yeah, but I mean, it sounds a little bit like that's what you're saying.
Yeah, it's I don't want to be a stumbling block in someone's path of curiosity, and so that's why I do the whole sense of we are spiritual beings, right? And so I think I like to connect in that sense, and so when I'm talking, I do like to try and figure out the common basis, right? And then show how that is also found in the Bible, because that's what somebody did to me. I was secular and very liberal, and then I met somebody and they were talking to me about the Bible, and they were connecting it with concepts that I was interested in, and I'm no other Christian has ever done this for me, it was. And I also had my stigma on Christians, right? And what they believed. And so just to have that dialogue and not be judged or say oh, you believe in energy, that's bad, or that's from the devil. And it's and it's no, it's in the Bible, and so it's I feel the Bible's a lot cooler than what people have conceived in their own minds.
Yeah. But it would take a little while to discover that about each other and about how to learn to trust one another that way. So basically, at the foundation of all these conversations would have to be some kind of a commitment to come together with some regularity. Have a few opportunities to compare notes, whether that is in an estuary group or some other way, and coffee at Starbucks, would work equally well. But the idea being that that, okay, well, there are some ground rules. I mean, I like, for example, the fact that you mentioned that we don't interrupt. You know, I mean, what a concept. We're gonna listen to each other. You know, one of the most important things about being able to share is to make a firm commitment ahead of time to listening very well. It's a lost art. You can read books about listening. It's kind of a cool thing.
I remember when I came out to my father that I was a Christian.
Yeah.
Which is sort of a weird thing to say, I have to say, because it's like, you know, it's a secret or something like that. But, you know, his initial reaction was that I would be offended of his behavior, that by being a Christian, that I would all of a sudden start judging his behavior, that, you know, that this would give me the moral high ground in situations, and that would be something that I would then, you know, maybe utilize in arguments, or that the disconnection would be there, right? And
so that was his fear.
I think so. Like, if I had to say, you know, like he was treading very carefully all of a sudden in conversations around different topics where we would easily connect before, and all of a sudden he thought that since I was connected with this thing, that, you know, everything that he said would potentially be like an inflammatory comment that I would then storm out of the room, or, you know, get upset about, which I find really laughable, because if anything, I think the faith that I found with this is the exact opposite. It's the ability to sit with anybody about any, you know, decision that they have and allow them to have that. But you know for me, and try and share that, you know, for me, if they want to know that this is how I feel about it, it's an opinion too, you know, and it's a more informed, because I lived 38 years of my life as without any specific religion, right? So I had Christianity completely figured out. You know, I knew everything about it. I clearly demarcated it off and put it in this corner, and I said, that's religion. I don't need that. I'm way smarter than this, you know, like I don't need this thing that these people need. And then I went, and one day, and I peeked inside the box, and like it just blew everything open. And then I like fell into this like huge, like it's never ending. It's never ending. Whereas I had this like container that I had sorted out, and I was like so smart, so prideful. And then I opened up this other thing. It's wow, like imagine if I just stayed here all the time. What would that have been like? It's like not good. To miss that.
I can only speak from my own personal experience, but I'm just, every now and then you run across somebody in your life that changes your life, and that happened to me. And it happened to be just I thought she was a teacher. I didn't know for a long time that she was a nun, and you're just attracted to this person. I would just want to hang around you, and because just that energy they put off. And then I was just all of a sudden, oh my God, you're a nun, you know, it's like, just that thing. And so it was like, I just want to hang around you. And then I met a priest in Mexico, and it's just these people that changed my life. And it's just, I don't know what happened, but I just surrendered one day. You know, it's like, I just want to do kind of model you as much as I can. And then all that, I mean, just the other day I was struggling with somebody. What kind of Christian are you? You're Catholic? Oh, y'all do this and that. And I found myself, wow, what is it? You know, it's not the Bible. And then, so I went back, I asked her just the other day, it's about doctrine and stuff. And she just said, you know, I'm not sure if you should ask me because I'm not that good of a Catholic. And she's a nun. But it's this, you know, so like, that made me, wow, you know, you can be that honest and open. And it's like, if you don't know, who am I going to ask? You know, but to me, that was it's just amazing and surprising. And if she's not that good of a Catholic, then I'm okay then. You know, and I don't know what that even means, but yeah. So it was.
I try to make that point in my presentation when I said that I actually know a lot of stuff. I know a lot of theology. I've read a lot of, you know, doctrinal stuff and how it all's supposed to fit together. And I have this mental image that a lot of the theology that we surround the faith with is kind of like a card house. And if you house of cards, if you pull out one card, the whole thing collapses. And so I have this real strong sense that there are these houses of cards that are being built and that have been built over centuries, and it's all terribly important. And I had to learn and memorize and feed back and regurgitate a lot of this stuff and familiarize myself with it. But it had no power. It had no inherent power to change anybody's life, including my own. And so then when I discovered that, okay, so there are some things that hold power, well, then in my mind, at least, that is to be preferred over the theology and the thinky-talky stuff, that we often do in this little corner of the internet. There's a lot of talking about how all these things fit together and who was right about this and who was right about that. And in some ways, I'm a little bit like Eddie in that, okay, so show me what you believe by the way you act. But in another way, I'm saying, I'm not so sure that I care a whole lot with what you believe or how you act. But what I do care about is that we somehow are able to create a community together. So I just ignore.
I mean, that was the example that we were trying to pull up on stage, right? Is this thing within?
Yeah.
How do you address the thing that comes from within, right? It's like, how do we salvage sort of, and the connection that I want to make is to a friend that's recently going through a divorce, and he's matched up with a therapist. And in the first session, the therapist had kind of picked a side, like this person's right and this person's wrong. And then it's like, well, how do we improve communication if it's now 2 against 1 with every conversation that sort of comes?
Is this a licensed therapist?
Well, and this is it. Like, I don't know. I don't think that's as like, you need to immediately stop seeing this lady was the first thing of advice I thought I could give. And then he went out immediately after, just like this, and he bought 3 more sessions with her, like, because of course his wife, who he doesn't want to lose, right? His wife is like the most important thing to him, and he's losing her, and not on his own choice. Like, this is part of the dynamic, and she loves this lady. She absolutely loves her because she's in her favor, right? And it's like, oh my goodness, like, this is not going to go well, like, down the road though, and but so connecting it to kind of what you were saying, it's like you don't really have, an easy option when it's that sort of crisis. It's sort of picking, it's that,
I think that's something that, like, I've noticed is, at least for myself, I know I have to keep my eyes on God and, like, the scriptures instead of, like, other people, right? Like, I shouldn't base Christianity based off of, like, the hurtful things that other Christians have done. And I think that's how a lot of people also leave the church, right? Because they get hurt by the church, and the church is the people. And so it's like, how do you deal with that, right? Because it is hurtful. And then you go into like, well, you're a Christian, like, you shouldn't be like this. And so
go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's actually the reason that I left the church when I did, was that my mom was becoming a minister, and I grew up in the church and had my faith for many years, or at least, what a childhood version of faith is. And as my mom was becoming a minister, I was, a teenager and, getting into college and recognizing, like, people are human beings, and, there's infighting and people were not very nice to my mom when she was a minister. And I didn't like that. I felt like, here we are in this Christian faith where it's all about, loving each other and being kind to each other and listening to each other. And that sort of thing is going on. And I was like, I don't have space for that. And, that I don't have space for that in my life. And what I really thought was interesting was almost everybody that talked today talked about how, being in a church is not easy because there is conflict. And I recognize now, as I'm 30 years older, that there's value in being able to navigate that conflict. But I wasn't ready for that then. I didn't have the skills in life to be able to to understand that the things that were most challenging for me were actually the things that were, our growth opportunities, right? Places where you can try to be open even in the midst of something that feels really hard. And so I'm just reflecting on that because that was so much of my path and my journey. And it was very challenging.
But to Bianca's point, hate to bring it to you, girl, but there's a lot of dysfunctionality in the Bible too.
I know. when I was first coming into the faith, I was like, I can't get baptized. Like, I'm not a righteous person. And I was like, I'm like, people in the Bible are so righteous, and I'm not like that. And then I started reading the Bible, and I'm like, dang, there's some messed up people. Because they're scandalous. Like, I can't believe it. I'm like, oh, okay, like, now it makes sense. It's like, we are people, and that's why we need Messiah. And so, and so just focusing on my own relationship, right? Like, I think that's the thing, is that, like, we need to focus on our own relationship with Christ and just, like, making it real in our life and manifesting it, right? Being that light for other people. We're not perfect. And so I think it's kind of just dealing with that.
Something like, additionally, like within the demons within, and maybe the demons within, to your question, Karen, about like what is it that's keeping people from engaging with this kind of stuff. And I think a lot of it is like to deal with the recent decades of just the politicization of the church as like a political force, that we're like living through the the reaction to that, the reactivity to like what, at least in America, at least that I can observe from like the, like turning the faith into a voting block to get your seats in the House of Representatives or whatever. And now we, there's like an active anti-Christian, through line in the culture. And it's on, it's like on steroids. And it's scary.
Christians have lost some credibility that way.
Sure. Yeah. And it's it's a little bit scary, So how do you build back that credibility? I think all the stuff that everyone is saying here is so good for doing that.
Are you saying that Christians are too closely associated with conservative or the Republican Party, I guess?
I guess. Or just like a certain way of like, this is just like, this is our identity. It's an identity that then becomes used as a voting block. And now we're playing identity politics on such a crazy level that it's, and it's, it's polarized, it's demonized. It's like what you're saying about what happened in this congregation, but on like the societal level, it's like we have a complete split and there's no communication. It's just villainization. Yeah. And so how do people like us who clearly are outside of that, or on a higher level, I guess we should say, because we observe that. How can we,
So, are you sure about that?
I don't know.
Are we removed from Christian nationalism in this room?
Oh, I don't know.
No, we don't know exactly. But that's precisely the point. So we have not yet gotten to the level of honesty with one another that we would be able to identify to each other and be honest about that. Yeah, I identify with Christian nationalists, or I hate Christian nationalists. It's another elephant in the room.
Sure.
Which then becomes an unfortunate thing, because it is observed from the outside. People are talking about Christians as though they're either this or they're that. And we here in the room, we don't even know exactly where we're at with that. And I know for a fact that for me to say that right now raises the tension level a little bit. and raises our trust in one another just a little bit. Wait a minute. There are Christian nationalists in this room? I don't know. Right now, I don't know where to look. I don't know who I dare. I don't know if I dare to look at anybody.
Can I add something to that? But I think that, you know, what we're here about, if you look at where the altar is right now on the stage and what we're watching and what that behavior looks like, is we have people that are very diverse, having conversations in ways that, despite all the different disagreements, can connect in a way that's super built on this growth thing, rather than trying to pull out the other side's points or rip it apart or, you know, tear it down. What we're watching is like this behavior of what I think, you know, this model done right could be. You know, it's like pro baseball up there, and I'm an amateur player wanting to be in there and sort of doing it, you know, and it's like, okay, well, so if that, because that's the spirit, right? Like that's the same thing happened in Thunder Bay. There was this spirit of what it is. And if, I don't know, you guys have been having conversations the whole day and you're not running into arguments about, you know, disagreements and this and this. So like, what is that?
So you're saying we're a pre-filtered group, pre-filtered by our association with this little corner of the internet, or by our appreciation of the conversation that's happening on the stage. Because we appreciate that, we are less likely to be Christian nationalists. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know that I'm saying that. I would say that I'm intuiting that what we're doing is something that's not the politicized, aggressive, in-your-face version of that. Yeah. And I don't know why. I'm not saying that I have the answer.
Yeah, and even if you were saying that, you, I guess, yes, pre-filtered by being in this space, you're open to dialogue and conversation. Not, yes, like, you know, you don't have the iron box of, you know, your worldview.
We also haven't really tapped incredibly challenging conversations.
Yeah. So what do you want to bring up?
Oh no.
I mean, let's see if we can do it like them. That would be my response to that, is because like if we can see that happen, we can do it too. You know? Like they don't start yelling at each other. They don't. It's just not how that works. And yet everywhere else that is. So what's going on?
So that is the one way to frame the question, and I really like how you do that. Okay. You know, what's going on in the room that prevents that from happening? Or, as Kara says,
what are we not touching?
What are we not talking about yet? Because if the right topic comes up, we may just kill each other here.
No. Let's not do that.
No. But that is actually an interesting distinction, because it really pushes against the power of evil that could infiltrate any space. Any space.
Yeah, but coming in, we knew, I mean, most of us already knew that, you know, what kind of Christian are you? But for, you know, everybody knew that for Reiki, it's not. And the dialogue still was open and free going.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if that would happen if somebody else. I mean,
well, the last one, it was more equal because Dr. Mondrel as well was not someone of faith, so it was sort of like kind of two and two people that weren't connected with faith.
Oh, they voted me in to kind of create that balance.
Yeah, to fix that. Yeah.
How did they do?
I wanted to say that the hand holding the, is it a baby? Yes. If you flip that over, it's the same shell. Like it's the same shape, except it's the other side. So the idea of sort of the shell that you were following through that whole path, when you flip it over with this, it's the palm holding, it's got that, the symbolism, sort of this top bottom thing. And even this, you know, the idea of the paths sort of coming into one sort of spot made me think of like the hand. So a hand, I don't know. That's sort of what came to me about when you're sort of cool.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
It's a great too.
physicality,
Anatomy, yeah.
and anatomy.
I'm always connecting to the brain or body.
Speaking of anatomy, we were saying in the room when they were talking about how to let go of that grasping. So Christ's hands on the cross being nailed, if we were to take up our cross or be willing to be placed on a cross, you wouldn't be able to grasp because they're arms nailed. So there's no grasping when you're willing to
Interesting.
sacrifice.
So how do you raise children with this stuff?
Who's got kids?
I would get on my lineage kids.
How do you? I'm really interested. How do you? Because
Personally, I feel like the protection of the ark, and I'm grateful every day that my kids were raised in that protection. And it is a little bit outside of this world, and I imagine they were seen a teeny bit like they were different, and that's fine with me. But to me, the liturgical life brought the protection between the Eucharist, their guardian angels, their patron saints, and I could go on. The prayers I felt like they were in the ark. I could sleep at night.
Yeah.
So,
do you mind if I ask? Are your children? I'm sorry. How old are your children now? Are they
so 32, 29, and 27.
Oh, okay. So they're old enough to have sort of developed their own personalities and potentially faiths.
And thanks be to God, there was no suffering with. My heart breaks for the kids today. Our suicide rates are skyrocketing. As a society, we are failing our young adults. I think everybody is responsible to help lift them up in whatever way we can as a society. Let them know that they're loved. Let them know that they're wanted. Let them know that they're needed. Let them know that they're important. And thanks be to God, my kids then never suffered any of that lack of feeling loved. And the household, but it was more than the household. It wasn't our doing. It was, I honestly believe, the protection of that.
Holy combination.
So I'm extremely grateful. I was grateful for what my parents gave me. And my mom came from a foreign country here. And yet, when you were talking about, what word did you use? Showing up. She showed up. And it was hard. She left 8 brothers and sisters, born and raised in Brazil. And they were faith-based there. But she showed up to a foreign country. And she made it work. And she showed up. And so I'm forever grateful for that.
Good.
And each of my kids also married in the church. And now I have 3 grandkids that when I say that I feel protected, my daughter's living in the Midwest, which is very different from California.
There may be certain downsides to sequestering maybe your children, or the ark, as you call it. But you recognize that. But I also think that, I really respect that. I mean, I think there is kind of a lot of derangement in our society, and inverted values that's can be very easy to warp your own, influence your own. I think we know that about social media. Social media definitely seems like kind of an inverted value structure, and it doesn't really represent any of our lives for real. So it's very easy to kind of spend too much time there and have it change your life. Probably has something to do with the suicide rates that you had mentioned. I just wanted to say that I really respect that, and that you acknowledge that you're aware that there may have been some downsides, but ultimately, it sounds like, and I would wager a bet that there were many more upsides to it. I'd be very tempted to do that. I mean, I don't have kids. I'd be very tempted to do something like that with my kids too.
What would you do?
Well, it seems to me that the values taken very frivolously from modern culture, that which is advertised to us through social media, it can be picked up by anywhere. I mean, it's shoved in our faces.
By what method would you protect your children from that?
Well, so I think that takes an awareness of recognizing potential downsides, which is sequestering a generation, at least for a little while, from this potentially damaging technology, you know? So maybe limiting the use of a phone. I mean, you know, John Vervaeke made several jokes about this over the course of his talk, that, you know, the phone is so ubiquitous to us now that being away from it for, you know, even 30 minutes can feel like a strained relationship. So yeah, I mean, I think those kinds of compromises might actually be necessary, in hopes of solidifying a value structure before, you know, giving your kids who are already so, you know, they're culture sponges, so influenced by the world around them, you know, so eager to learn. So you just go back to that. I think that might be okay, you know, but imagine as a parent, you'd be very concerned that your children may not adjust, you know, socially. They'd be left out potentially, you know, without a phone. But I don't know, maybe that's okay.
Should we hear from a few other parents to see how that's working out?
Yeah, I mean, I could speak to trying to like model it like in my own life about parenting. So how let me say, it's hard to, I'm trying to live the Christian life. My husband, he is my ex-husband at the moment. It's a complicated story, but he is not, and co-parenting with somebody that isn't is really difficult because he's like, well, whatever about this, and I'm like, no, you know. And so I feel like the best thing that I take, you know, we go to church every Sunday. I'm not Orthodox, you know, and no, non-denominational, or Protestant, I guess. And but I'm really trying to model for her the way of love. Like, I won't talk bad about her father in front of her. You know, we talk about how he's not a believer. We pray for him every day. Really just trying to like not model for her what love looks like even in a difficult situation, and honor him even though the situation isn't great, and always point her to God when she's feeling down or when she's wrestling with something. I sent her to go pray about it, you know, and I really try to cultivate in her a relationship with God, so that someday when she, you know, when I'm not there, it's like, it's not me, it's you have a relationship with God, not me. And yeah, that's something that I try really, really hard to give her.
Thank you. Friends, I really hope that when other estuary opportunities might arise, that we can come back here together. I think that quite apart from what Justin wants to do with the filming of this, we are doing Estuary in the best possible way. I just really appreciate the way everybody is engaged and participating. And so I hope that tomorrow we can do a little bit more of this. But tonight, we need to wrap it up so we can be out of here by 9. I promised the church people that we'd be out of here by 9. And so other people have places to go. So thank you all for being here. And I hope that I can count on you to join us again tomorrow at some point. So,
Great.
So you just watched the sample estuary meeting that happened at the Chino conference, and I even though in some ways the selection of people weren't so-called normies, as John said before we played that video, we do this all the time with people who know nothing of TLC, nothing of Jordan Peterson, nothing of John Vervaeke. In fact, when John and I were in Europe a couple summers ago, we did this night after night in the UK with different audiences, and it always worked. And actually, I do it every Sunday morning at 9 o'clock with some church people and some non-church people. Now it's a little different for me because of my YouTube channel. I sometimes get visitors who come in, but often, like this week, I had two guys who watched my channel, and they both brought girlfriends. And you could see when the girlfriends came in with them at 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning to a strange little church in a crummy part of town, they were a little skeptical about what they were getting into. But by the end of the meeting, they were, I think they were quite taken by the whole thing, and they were surprised that they could come into a room with total strangers and have a meaningful conversation. And in many ways, I think that people are often surprised how much transparency regular people show. You always know when the conversation gets good, when people start applying what the topic is to their personal life and doing a little bit of disclosure and being willing to share some of those personal items. Already in this group that has only been together for an hour or so, they're already beginning to trust one another. And that to me is really key here. And it doesn't take a lot to start this. Yes, it takes a little bit of small group know-how, but at estuaryhub.com, that link is below. It's always below in my videos. You can get connected up with ElseNet. That's something that John Van Donk really got going and continues to go. And so, yeah, we're training leaders all the time and starting new groups all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that at the conference, prior to filming this, I was a part of two different estuary groups. And the one thing that I found in those groups was that people were just chomping at the bit to get a little bit deeper with these conversations. You know, this group may have even been a little reserved because of the two cameras and the lights in the room, you know. And so John, do you want to say just briefly the sense of not you don't really prepare for this and getting them to talk as a leader? I mean, I think because the film or what we just watched sort of showcases the protocol that you developed.
Well, the one thing that is kind of unique about the protocol is that it is, and I have to be honest, I kind of fell into that. The protocol is not an academically formulated, methodical, systematic way of running a group. It's kind of the accumulation of a lot of my personal group experience. But the goal always has been, and continues to be, to give every participant a voice. Help people find their own voice. And so you start that by saying, well, who are you? What's your name? And where are you from? And how'd you get here? And sometimes that already is an invitation for people to say, hey, they actually care who I am in this group. And then, well, there's not somebody there with a big stack of papers and a prepared speech who is going to lay things on me. No, they actually want to know what I've been thinking. And if what I've been thinking matches with what a few other people have been thinking, then all of a sudden we have a conversation that I was a major contributor to the start of it. So people have already a sense of their own importance and relevance and belonging to the group. And that message alone, I think, is what in some ways attracts people to the estuary, because it is a way of making everybody feel they can make an equal contribution to the conversation. And the only thing that's often hard for people to learn, and I myself am the worst offender, and that is you have to be a good listener. You have to really learn to listen to what other people are saying, because that is the only way you're going to find, I mentioned in the video, I think I called it the spirit in the room, but sometimes we even refer to it as finding the angel in the room. It is not until people learn to listen to one another that you're going to find out how much we have in common, how much we can gather around a shared topic, and how much meaning we can derive from that, and having a conversation around that. And I think that then the actual topic of conversation is almost irrelevant, because people find a way to connect and find a way to bring their own agendas into it and their own way of talking about things and their own communication style. And so it's very democratic. It's a kind of a cool experiment in democracy, because nobody gets the floor exclusively.
Right. Okay. So that's the video, and you know what to do. You know who to call if if you want to get involved with something similar. So thanks for watching.
Thank you.